Welcome to the Health Tech Edge, the podcast on how technology is reshaping healthcare operations. I'm Mike Moore. Each episode is a practical conversation with leaders who are building, buying, or running the tools that reduce administrative burden and improve productivity in healthcare. Today, I'm joined by Barbara Wittmann. Barbara is an award winning author and interim CIO. She spent about 25 years in digital transformation and project recovery work, including time at SAP and later running her own consulting practice. Today, she leads the Digital Wisdom Collective, which is focused on building what she calls human infrastructure and giving leaders a place to practice working through complexity, especially as AI shows up everywhere. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I think this is, a lot of the conversations we have on the podcast talk about tools and technology, but what struck me about the work that you are doing that's so interesting is it's really leaning into the human side of things and really supporting the growth and development of the people who are responsible for all of these AI systems and tools. Um, let's get into some of the details of this. When you look at organizations and how they're reacting to AI right now, what are you seeing in terms of what's working and what's not?
Well, the initial reaction that was pretty much the theme for last year was a fear of missing out. And it was heavily driven by, we just got to have it. So pilots were run, people got, broadband, ChatGPT or other fun tools to do with. And now it's basically the sobering year where people are starting to wake up and say, well, just throwing technology at it is not going to fix this because we really need to scale up the organization and we also need to train the people in a different way. And what we have known as literacy, and that's widely known as AI literacy, is one angle of attack, but it's only just one sliver of what we really need to know in order to operate and actually improve what we do with AI.
And I know that you, with your background in IT and consulting, one of the things that struck me in some of the work you've done, you say, we would never deploy software straight to production, but we're doing that with people. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so from an IT and software background, whenever you are adding something new, you have a dedicated test environment, and you are testing, all different cases, also edge cases, to kind of see, does it hold up? Does the system operate in a way you need it? And then you deploy it to production. For people, for some way, we think that with a simple 1 hour training, we know it and we know how to act and operate. So there is no such thing as a test environment for people, if you will. And this is what I have created, where people are taken out of their organization and they have a safe space and a testing environment where they can try themselves out and they can ask all the stupid questions they always wanted to ask and that they would never dare to come up front with in the organization. So what I'm seeing with AI is that we really need more of a improving our own judgment and what I would call adaptive agency of how do we connect the dots? How do we make sense of things? Because if you're feeding that machine with the wrong thing, it gives you the wrong answer. Very simple.
What do you think? You've been in the industry for a long time, as I have. What do you think is so different about AI and the way that people are behaving associated with AI and AI initiatives? I feel like in some ways, it's another technology. We've seen different waves of technology come in the years, and some more innovative and game changing than others. But it feels like there's something different, or at least the way people behave with AI and both the promise and the risk and threat, especially in the world of healthcare, right? It's causing people to act a little strange and differently in many ways.
So every technology we have improved upon or implemented before was really to, you know, do something more of in a background function for us. So every technology before never forced us to upgrade people. It never asked if we are enough of a human to operate it. And this is exactly where the equation is changing now because AI as a technology is really becoming a co-worker. It's not a technology anymore. It is a co-worker that wants to interact with us, wants to play with us. But for that, for the first time, we are questioned to say, wow, so if I'm getting a new coworker, what am I really good at then as a person? What is my superpower as a person? So we need to question ourselves. I think that is the biggest prompt because we are not just the busy bees anymore. AI is forcing us to say, wow, so if I have a coworker that can do the busy work, like writing notes or something, then what is the superpower I can show up with more? Empathy, you know, asking better questions. What would be possible then? So, this is a technology that is asking us to be better humans. Never happened before.
Yeah, and that is, I think, a very fundamental change. And I think about, I have two kids who are out of college and one who's in college, but I think about the workforce of the future. And if you did take all the work away that, is done by people sitting at computers, desks, I don't think 100% of it's going to go away. But if you took a good chunk of it away and replaced it with artificial intelligence and those digital coworkers, or digital workers, right? Then you start to question things like, in a society like ours, where your work determines, the economic, it's both your contribution and what you receive back in compensation, right? It's like, how do you do things? I know these are, kind of themes that people ask Sam Altman of OpenAI, right? Like, is there a universal basic income? These are, there are some big concepts at play, right? And I think it's easy to get overwhelmed when you start
Yeah.
thinking about them.
No, absolutely. But essentially, what AI is asking us to do is we need to learn how to collaborate again, first and foremost with, coworkers around us that we know and we can touch, and then with somebody who is just, an electronic machine. So it is asking us to redefine and upgrade our collaboration skills in our co-creation skills. And for that, we may be asked to look at ourselves and really say, okay, so what is happening here? Is it why am I scared now? You know? So a lot of people go into the instant fear and victim mode, and this is not how we are changing things. I fundamentally look at AI as a very useful and game-changing thing. This is like back when the tractor was plowing the field and not the horse anymore. It's like, whoa, so somebody's doing the heavy lifting now. What can I do?
Which gives us a great opportunity. So, right, to kind of reframe what is work and what are the human contributions, right? So, let's
Yes.
talk about Digital Wisdom Collective and kind of what you've put together. So, who is it for, and how does it work?
So it is for people that are essentially in the trenches of transformation. That could be a middle manager, that could be a director or C-level. So everyone who is in that power battle between strategy and execution. And that is a ton of people right now. So everyone who's wondering how to navigate that best and how it's working, it is based on a very fundamental belief that we only learn if we practice together because we have enough methods, we have enough tools, we don't need any of that more. We need to really practice on how to collaborate, how to figure out issues together, how to make sense together in a way. And what we offer in the Digital Wisdom Collective is a space where we work around a shared values base that is deciding how we solve problems and how we make decisions. And in a diverse group that is different industries, different hierarchy levels, we meet twice a month and we can figure out issues that have come up for somebody. We pick one issue and we problem solve together. And what we do there repeatedly, always the same cycle go around, understanding what is the real problem before we jump to conclusions, is really muscle memory. And it also is muscle memory to understand that I can, ask others, that I can trust others, that I can create a space where I can jointly problem solve. And you can take that instantly back to your organization and implement it with your coworkers.
And I have to imagine, obviously, the person whose issue is taken up, in that meeting, they certainly benefit because they can take it right back. But I think from, having been an adult learner in an education program, kind of doing going to class every Tuesday night, I was able to apply it, whether it was my story or someone else's, to what I
Yes.
was doing the very next day. So I have to imagine there is that shared benefit that and I'm sure everyone gets a turn the way that you manage
Exactly.
things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is a shared benefit just by listening and observing. There's a lot to be taken away and learned. And for organizations that want to take it a little bit further than just sending a handful of people to go through that experience, we also help them to really anchor and implement what we call the human infrastructure, and not just train up people, but also create what we call wayfinding artifacts. It really is like the old-fashioned, physical map that you would unfold when you go on a road trip. Because one thing is, upgrading people, but they also need to have, the shared way markers where to go.
Yeah, I think that the human infrastructure part of this, is an interesting piece to consider because especially in IT projects, we think so much about digital infrastructure. Do we have the right tools and even to a certain extent processes, right? Do you run agile sprints and all of this? But I think the human transformation, not just in the execution or the adoption of the software, but in the planning that goes into it, because a lot of the work that we see in our day to day here at Productive Edge around AI gets into core workflows about the potential exists to reinvent how we work because now we have this artificial and albeit intelligence, but something that is capable of processing with some sort of cognitive, obviously it's human programmed abilities, right? But I think that is kind of the mystery of AI is that it has the ability to take on a big transformation. So when you think about the group and some of the work that's come through lately, what are, without giving away, obviously, we'll talk about kind of privacy and how you protect the members and participants and the airing of dirty laundry. But what are some of the typical things that are coming through? What have you noticed lately as some of the issues that the group's describing as they come to the collective?
The biggest challenges that people bring to the table is usually work overload and too many conflicting priorities and how to sort through this. Um, so it goes into resource allocation. How do we manage these things properly? The other topics that comes through quite a bit is who owns what, and that is a huge question for AI. Who has ownership of, really managing, governing the ideas and so on. So that are two of the main topics that are being discussed. And, you know, ironically, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm going to sit with other industries and, possibly a competitor or something. We cannot share any secrets. Usually the main problems that we grapple with are far from any secrets or any details. It really is very human organizational issues or just how do I find the right next step.
Yeah, which I think is the concern that a lot of people would have. But if you've participated in any kind of professional organization like this, you've been to round tables, either, in person or digital, I think there's usually some sort of shared values, as you talked about earlier, or some code of conduct or something that sets an expectation about what makes sense to talk about with the group, what you should hold back, and how the information will be treated, and attribution, right? Like it's easy to go to an event or a conference or the collective and say, that you learned about something. You don't have to attribute it back to the person, and just as you wouldn't
Exactly.
necessarily want them probably to attribute it to you.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have rules of the road and code of conduct that everyone agrees on, and a shared set of values that we operate under. And we are pretty diligent of keeping it a safe space where, a dynamic can happen that we cannot create in our work environment, or if we go to a trade show, just talking to people casually.
Yeah, I think there's always this feeling, people, it depends on how they are in their career and kind of what they feel their superpowers are, but that notion that they need to have all the answers, right? That, the
Yeah,
organization is counting on them to have all the answers. And I think the recognition that there is something new and different about AI and the powerful transformation that it could represent for you or your organization or your team or department, whatever you look after, and that maybe asking someone who has some expertise or is dealing with the same challenges that there's kind of some brotherhood, sisterhood, however you want to characterize it in that you can find some
yeah.
support and give you the confidence to be able to move forward, but not always feel like you have to have all the answers.
Absolutely, and that, by the way, is largely also a generational question. Specifically, millennials. They kind of came into the squeeze where they were pushed to have all the answers. And now to be vulnerable and say, hey, but I don't, you wouldn't do that in your workplace. One other piece that should not be underestimated is for people who want to go a step further, we do have self-development aspects that, can be gone through as an add-on. And that is largely to, if I want to transform my department, my organization, I might as well start with me because maybe some of the thought patterns or beliefs I have may not be helping how I innovate.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful because there is that I think a lot of people sit down with ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever their product of choice is and use it as kind of a digital coworker and bounce ideas or brainstorm or organize meeting notes or whatever they're using it for, right? The people who kind of choose to take AI as that tool and kind of use it as that digital coworker. And you can certainly ask it. It will never, unlike humans that will admit when they don't know something. ChatGPT will never tell you or never offer, kind of the hands up, kind of like not sure kind of thing, right? It's always going to offer a confident response.
Yeah,
But there is that important piece, I think, of being able to ask someone for advice who's been through it or who's at least, struggling with the same issues. I think the self-paced learning resources, some people may or may not feel comfortable. They want to have some reading material first where they can go through this. So it's good that you're investing in building out that content as well as kind of the live interactive
yeah,
experiences too.
yeah. That's super important in my mind because if we feel very insecure about ourselves, we interact with people differently and we sure, ask different questions to our AI buddy. So we basically would train AI based on our own insecurities, which, what can go wrong?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, well, I think it can amplify those things, right? And I think that's the
Yes.
risk, right? Is that, this is, and I think that, when you and I spoke previously, you talked about, some organizations, they're the loud ones, right? Who
Mm.
will be out there and telling everyone, their point of view or how they think things should go. But your advice to me was to think about the quiet ones. Do you want to talk a little bit about this concept and what you've seen?
Yes. So what I have seen repeatedly in a pattern of 25 years is that the middle of the organization is where the juice lies, and that is the people that are actually implementing the change or that are actually using the software you have rolled out. And they know the most. They are a treasure trove of advice, but they usually are not really asked because they had something to say at some point. They tried to place it once and no one listened. So what happens with them is, their voice is starting to come on, and it's like, of course, I'm not an IT person. What do I have to say? Better shut up in the future. So those become the quiet ones that really know a lot, but they need to be teased a little bit or empowered to say, hey, share what you know. They usually are the ones that people gravitate to as someone to ask, but who usually gets the, added training or the, yay, you're a high potential accolades are the loud ones, are the ones that would go around and bang their own drum repeatedly. And we all know these people, they piss us off beyond belief, right? So, especially in the age of AI, we need to start looking and put our focus onto those quiet people because they can really elevate the organization in so many different ways. The quiet ones can become the carrier of a message, of innovation, of a new way of doing things, because they are the trusted ones, the people that are loud and marching through the hallways. People see them, but are they really trusted for the most part? Do
Yeah.
people confide in them? So I like elevating and empowering the quiet ones.
Yeah, which reminds me of a conversation I just had on the podcast with Michelle Mello, who's a professor of law and a professor of public health policy at Stanford, and has a organization there called Heal AI, which is an acronym, but essentially it's their group for how they help support Stanford Med on considering healthcare AI use cases. And part of
Yes.
it is interviewing stakeholder groups not just within the organization, but also the patients, those people who come and seek care from their institutions. It's a multi hospital system. So they're trying to reach out and make sure they stay connected because for the AI to truly benefit the organization and its operations and its finances and all of that stuff is great. How does it affect patient care and patient experience? Is it giving them more of what they need to feel trust in their healthcare providers and the team that they see and interact with, who they're
Yep.
literally putting their lives in their hands or the lives of their children or their loved ones, right? So healthcare is such a delicate business. It's still a business, but really, in the US healthcare system, right, where money makes it work, right? It's not a socialized service like we see in other parts of the world where it's a human right, right? Something it's still a very economics-based thing. And I think we have an opportunity in healthcare to do better. And I think AI gives us that potential, but also carries great risk, maybe more so than other industries.
No, absolutely. And, there's delicate information at stake. So, how do you handle data becomes an entirely different question. But that is exactly the right approach that you described is if you are looking at a use case, you want to improve the experience either of the people you take care as clients or as your employees. That always needs to be the guiding principle.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, if you could give healthcare leaders who are out there planning their initiatives for 2026 some advice based on your experience and the work that you're doing now at the collective, what would you share with them?
You got to bring a diverse group of people to the table. When you're talking about AI, what to do with it, and what is working, what is not working, getting this rolled out cannot be an executive order. It usually starts with that, but then is the question on how do you buffer and how do you get buy-in from everyone else? Usually it is about if I go into organizations, I would say you need to have one person per department that is, wearing the AI flag and is organizing others to say, hey, how are you using this? What's your experience? What's working? What's not working? So have these stakeholders in your organization and send them out to users to advocate and give him some advice on, hey, this is what we have experienced. This is how it's working really well, and bring back some feedback. So make it really an interactive thing. We need to stop thinking about it as just a rollout project or where, we send out some SOPs and it's done. We need to keep the communication channels open and also make sure that you ask your patients, ask permission explicitly and maybe take a little extra minute to explain what's going to happen with that information and how it will improve your work. Because if you just say, hey, I'm going to just record this thing on AI, and proceed on, that's a red flag for most people. If you say, hey, this makes me focus entirely on what we are talking about, that's a different thing, you know? Execute on your superpower. And if you are in the healthcare business, your superpower is the people connection.
I think that's the reason that many practitioners have, when they dreamed of becoming a doctor, a nurse, a surgeon, a physician's assistant, whatever their role in healthcare is, many of them did that because they pictured themselves face to face with someone helping them, not with their back turned to the patient as they were using a computer to look up charts and tests and take notes as they're trying to understand what's happening with someone. So it really represents that potential to return to the roots of why they chose to pursue that path in their life. So, for more information, we'll go ahead and put a link to the Digital Wisdom Collective into the show notes. So, if folks want to find you in the group and learn more about what you're doing and join, I think that would be a great thing to pursue as another piece of advice, and making that opportunity available to their teams, I think is a great thing.
Yeah, and there's a booking link on there. You can just book a 30-minute call with me, and we can explore what would be the best fit. The other piece where you can read more about the thoughts I have about transformation, AI, and the development of talent is my Substack. It's the digitalwisdomcollective.substack.com, but we can also put that in the show notes.
Yes, we will. Excellent. Great recommendation. Well, Barbara, this was great. I like the idea. Just again, a reminder that we've never pushed software straight into production. We should stop doing that to people too, right? Give them a chance, create that community where they have a place to pressure test their ideas, work through things, think about those friction points, and get some help from some collaborators. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing these ideas.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And to everyone listening, if you got value from the show today, please go ahead and follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, share the episode with someone on your team who's trying to make AI actually work in the real world. We will see you next time.